Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm really thrilled and honored to have with me as my guest Professor Ayelet Fishbach, who's a professor at the University of Chicago and has written a best-selling book, Get It Done: Surprising Lessons from the Science of Motivation. Ayelet, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Richard.
So let's just dive right in and ask you, let me just come out right and ask you, what are the surprising lessons from the science of motivation?
Oh, there are many. Okay? There is an entire book. But if I will try to be general, I would say that people often think about motivation as something that they either have it or not. Okay, people talk about losing their motivation, which I always find funny because what does it mean to lose your motivation? It's like it's not something that you ever had. It's not a thing that you hold in your possession. It's not your keys that you can lose. But motivation is really knowledge. Okay? It's knowing how to design your environment and how to think about your environment in a way that will make it more likely that you will achieve your goal. So I will start with that people have not the right concept of motivation.
Interesting. So it's more of a rational thing than people think of motivation as something emotional, right? Like I feel motivated, but you're saying it's actually a rational kind of construct?
Yes, it's not emotional. Also, for a while, researchers thought that motivation is like a muscle, okay, that you build, and we don't think that anymore. It's more of it's rational. It's knowledge, okay. It's knowing how to get things done.
So break that down a little bit for me then. How does one get things done? How do you get things done?
All right. And so you want to think about how you design your environment so that it is more likely to happen. And you want to think in particular in four categories. How do you set a goal? How do you monitor your progress? So looking back, looking forward, learning from feedback. You want to think about your other goals. Okay, how do you fit this thing with everything else that needs to happen in your life? And then you want to make sure that you have the support of the people around you. So social support is the fourth category. Now, within each of these categories, there are different strategies that you can use, but it's important to understand that you need everything to be set for success.
Interesting. Where does it break down most for people? Where does it usually break down, would you say?
It depends. Okay, so like different people and different goals, the challenge can differ. I would say that people often set the wrong goal, or set it in the wrong way. So the one common mistake is to set goals that are not intrinsically motivating, that there is nothing that is immediately satisfying in pursuing them. They will only pay off in the long run, and that's a common mistake. And another common mistake that I would mention now is when you have a very long-term goal, is to not take into account that your motivation will suffer in the middle, what I refer to as the middle problem. So you might start with much enthusiasm. If you ever get to the finish line, you might gather your energy again as you see the end. But in the middle is when motivation often suffers, and not taking this into account is
But
problematic.
isn't motivation, I mean, people feel like, when they get up in the morning and they have a list of goals to do, don't they need to feel like they want to accomplish them, whatever? I mean, it seems like it's very much a feeling driven kind of thing that, let's take exercise, for example, which everybody wants as a goal, to do that more often. I mean, isn't that the problem? You wake up in the morning, you just don't feel, you say, I don't feel motivated to exercise today.
Yes, okay, so let's work with this example. Okay, so you say I'm not motivated to exercise, but what does it mean? I maybe you did not find the workout regimen that you are excited to do. Okay, maybe you believe that you should be a runner and you would much rather do something indoors. Okay, or play sports as you exercise, and so maybe the goal is not sufficiently enticing or intrinsically motivating. Caitlin Woolley and I found that if you look at people's New Year's resolutions that many times are about exercising, what predicts adherence is how much they enjoy doing it. Okay, so is this something that you enjoy doing? Now, you are probably enjoying staying in bed more than you will enjoy getting up and doing that. Okay, so it's not that you should only exercise if it's the most enjoyable thing that you can think of doing, but it has to be sufficiently enjoyable. It has to fit with everything else that needs to happen today. Yeah, know that we are often pull apart in different directions. Okay, so there are other goals that might stand in the way. Who around you want you to exercise? Okay, want you to succeed in this goal. If the people that you share your life with think that this is a foolish thing to do and you should stay in bed, well, that's going to be really hard to do if they are supportive. Much easier, and I can go on and on, but you can see, as I analyze rationally, what needs to happen for you to get into these gym shoes, then we can design the environment in which this is much more likely to happen.
How did you come around to studying this area or picking this area as your area of research?
All right, yeah, I feel like we we immediately stepped into the research and what to do. So a bit of a background. Well, I grew up in Israel. I also got my PhD there in social psychology. I studied self-control at the end of the 90s. It was actually a topic that was just starting in the behavioral science. Behavioral economics was kind of starting to be a major field within econ. Social psychologists were starting to pay attention to motivation, and I was lucky to enter the field just then. I then joined the University of Chicago and had 20 years of studying motivation here.
Well, what are some of the other things that people can do you mentioned sort of 4 things. I mean, are there some practical tips that people can do to keep themselves motivated or, stay motivated?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is where I say, well, it's about knowledge. Okay, motivation is really about being smart, probably more than being strong. And if you do the analysis, if you apply the knowledge, you will get things done. So, a few things when setting a goal. Okay, it's important that the goal is not a means. Okay, it's not a chore. Okay, it's something that is attractive. Okay, it's something that is more of an ideal than you have to do it more than a chore. Okay, so one of the studies that we ran here, we auctioned a book. And to my MBA students, this was with Franklin Shetty. And we looked at the average bidding price. It was a bit over $20. And then to another group, we auctioned a tote bag that contained that book. Okay, so it was a tote bag with a book, but they are placing their bids on the tote bag. And the average bid was around $12. Okay, and so people were willing to pay less for a bag that contained the book than for the book. In economic terms, this makes no sense.
Right.
Okay? Obviously, they did not know about the other deals, so every person was just thinking about their own deal, either a bag in with a book or just a book.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, this is what happens when you don't like to invest in a prerequisite class. Okay, you want to invest in the class that you will take after you finish what you need to do.
Mm.
We don't like to pay for shipping. We don't like to pay for gift wrapping. We don't like to pay for parking. We like to work on the thing itself. So identify the goal as the thing itself, not as the way there.
Interesting.
Now I can keep going, but yeah.
Well, but let's take the example about the class. Like, okay, you want to be a doctor, you want to go to medical school, but you do have to take all those pre-med classes. Let's just follow that example. Don't you still need to keep motivated to get through all that? I mean, is that, or just do you make a sort of a miniature goal to get to the other goal?
Yes, so this is a great example. We actually looked at that, how people think about these prerequisite classes, and in particular, interesting in the context of med school, when you have like so much that you need to know before you can actually learn the thing that you sign up for.
Right.
People that are better able to sustain their motivation are people that see these prerequisites as already achieving the goal. Okay, people that think about this chemistry class as becoming a doctor, as opposed to I will take this chemistry and physics and math and whatever, and later on I can learn how to become a doctor. We refer to this in the literature as fusion. Yeah, seeing that the activity is fused with the goal. And if you train yourself to think about what you're doing in terms of the goal that you're achieving, you're going to find more motivation.
Talk a little bit about the importance of success and failure in motivation. I mean, obviously, I assume you want to, you talked about setting yourself up for success, or people always talk about setting up for your success, but break that down a little bit for me. I mean, I'm sure you've studied that a little bit more, because failure is inherently a part of success, right? I mean, you failed on the way to path to success.
Yes, okay, and this refers to you already have a goal. This refers to the second part. Okay, now you have to monitor your progress. Now you have to get from here to there, and you're going to have setbacks. Okay, you're going to have failure experiences. You might have losses. Okay, I've been talking to women that were trying to conceive and had a few miscarriages, and it's not really a failure. It's a setback. Okay, it's a loss, and you need to stay on course and get back on your feet. And what we generally find is that people are struggling to learn from setbacks. They are struggling to learn from failure. We don't really talk about failure so much, okay? And so it's hard to learn because you don't tell me about the things that did not work well for you, and I don't tell you about the things that did not work for me. And there are emotional and cognitive barriers to learning from failure. The emotional barrier is that it stinks, so I prefer not to think about it. And the cognitive is that what failure or setback teaches you is what's not. Okay? It's not how to do it, it's how not to do it. And so you need to learn by elimination, which is hard. Okay? Now I think about training a pet. We know that punishments often don't work because your dog knows that they should not pee on the carpet, but they don't understand where they should be. Learning by elimination is hard, and that's the what to do. There are a few things that you could do. Let me suggest one. Ask the person who is experiencing setbacks to give advice to another person who's struggling with the same thing. And if that's you, then ask yourself to to give advice.
Mm-hmm.
Lowen S. Chris Winkler and I, with also Angela Duckworth, found that when you encourage people to give advice, you force them to learn, and they're more motivated to go back, stand on your feet to try this again.
Well, that seems like pretty good advice. Do you find yourself helping people? I mean, in what you do now, do you find yourself helping people more with their, say, personal goals, motivation, or more in the corporate world? Tell me a little bit about how are you spreading your message and getting this interesting science out to people?
Well, so I'm a researcher, okay, and so I would say that probably 90% of the time I don't help anybody. I just write studies and collect data.
I see.
Publish papers. And then I do teach, and I teach management, which means that I, for years, had more experience sharing the research and sharing the knowledge with business people, with managers, with people that would like to motivate others around them. Over the last couple of years, last year I published a book that shares the knowledge with just people out there, and was my attempt to move beyond educating managers to educating the general public what you can do in your own life. And that
But
has
is the research that you do tend to be more in the personal realm, or they tend to be more in the corporate career realm, or what would you say the research that you're doing?
personal. Definitely personal. So I looked at health goals a lot, so exercising, healthy eating. I look at financial goals that people pursue for themselves. I look at career and academic goals, so career goals for employees, academic goals for students.
Do you
Definitely.
find there is some sort of like, isn't there sort of like a vicious cycle, like, failure, then you feel like giving up, and then success, you feel like, being more motivated? I mean, is that, how does that play into staying motivated?
Yes, basically success increases commitment.
Mm,
If you had a successful experience, you feel that you can do it and that it is more valuable, and commitment increases. That suggests that it's harder to stay motivated after failure. Experts are doing it better than novices.
mm. So is it more of I mean, you talked a little about, setting up environment. It sounded like you need to set up environments to make it successful. I mean, it also sounds like maybe it's really just having the right mindset, or is that not the right way to think about it?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so there are two aspects here. One is setting the environment, and the other one is framing the environment.
Talk a little
And
bit about framing the environment then. What does that mean?
that's the mindset.
Okay.
That's knowing how to think about things in a way that allows you to grow from the experience, in a way that allows you to stay motivated. So I bet many of your listeners are familiar with Carol Dweck's work on mindsets and thinking about setbacks either as an indication that something is wrong with me, in which case I should disengage with the goal. This is one mindset, or the growth mindset, which is understanding that setbacks is how you learn. Okay? Another example for framing is at any point in time, you can either look at the glass half full or the glass half empty. You can look at what you have done, and you can look at what you have not done. Okay? So maybe you exercised one day this week, and there are 4 days in which you did not exercise. And how you think about this is on you. Okay, this is framing, and for novices and beginners up to the midpoint, it's better to look at what you have done,
Yeah.
what is missing.
What about I mean, when I've read or heard many times, for example, exercise or a lot of these goals, they're simple, but they're not easy. There's a big difference between being something simple and, these are hard, even though maybe, exercising, if you want to lose weight, exercise more, eat less, seems simple, but that's not, it's still hard to do. How do you help, or what do you have any guidance on that, in terms of, a lot of these things are hard?
It's because they are hard that we need to engage in the process. Let's think about brushing our teeth. Okay, we don't really need to motivate ourselves to do that. At least not most of us. It's already completely habitual. If I ask you at this point of the day whether you remember brushing your teeth, well, you might not, but you know that you did that. Okay, now take your morning exercise that you mentioned before. Well, that is never going to be fully automatic. Okay, that's not going to happen by itself. And so you will need to set yourself up for success. And this is when you need to set the goal and monitoring the progress and look back so that you are motivated to look forward. And that fits this with everything else. So
interesting. Yeah,
it's hard. Let me say it in a different way. It is hard because if it wasn't hard, we wouldn't even having the conversation.
That's true. Well, back to your point, you don't need to write a book about how to motivate you to brush your teeth. That's probably not something you need to write a book about. Tell me what area, how are you taking your research now? You've written this book. Are you studying more of the same thing? Are you taking this into a different direction? Where are you going with this motivation stuff?
In several directions. One of the recent papers that we published looked at how to encourage people to start engaging in something difficult by embracing the discomfort, okay? By looking for the discomfort. And so while we find that if you like what you do, if you enjoy it, you have a much better chance of being able to persist over time, the initial engagement is often going to feel uncomfortable. And so we found that when we tell people to embrace this, for example, we worked here with an improvisation club, the Second City, and when we told students of improvisation to have the goal of feeling uncomfortable, they were more engaged. Okay? They were more willing to initiate the activity. That really opened the door to some other interventions that we are exploring, where we encourage people to make a mistake, to say something that might not be the smartest thing to say, to try to feel something that is not quite a success, okay? Maybe even try to fail as a way to get yourself to feel more comfortable with that and grow from this. Another area where I do a lot of work now is multiple goals and how to help people understand the relationships between these goals and understand that goals that seem conflicting often support each other on some other level that you did not consider. Just to give you an example, my students often tell me that it's either that they sleep at night or that they finish their assignment. And I tell them that if you think about this in terms of mental health and academic success, you will realize that mental health is necessary for academic success, and that being successful is going to help your mental health. It's just because the way you thought about these goals that you felt they are conflicting. You felt that you can only attend one of them. So we work on that.
Well, Ayelet, it was wonderful chatting with you. I really appreciate your taking this time. I interviewed Katie Milkman and she raved about you, so I immediately reached out to you and invited you to be my guest, but I really appreciate your taking this time.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you also for mentioning Katie Milkman, who's a personal friend and a hero. So yes, go read her book too.
This is Richard Hsu and Ayelet Fishbach. Thanks.
Thank you.